Part 1. Waiting on the ice. Arctic wasn't built for people. It didn't welcome them. It didn't feed them. It waited for them to make a mistake, then swallowed them whole. And yet, for thousands of years, nomadic hunters made a living. Here, on the thin white edge between sea and sky, they followed the seals. Not the way a wolf follows prey, with teeth and speed, but with patience that could break a man's mind. Seal hunting wasn't a chase. It was a negotiation with the ice itself. At the start of winter, when the sea froze into a wide, unbroken sheet, the hunters walked miles from shore, scanning for igloo, the breathing holes seals kept open with their bodies and breath. Some were fresh, their edges wet and smooth. Others had frozen over, abandoned. The good holes were marked with small ivory pegs carved into shapes. Only the hunters understood, a secret code on the open ice. A hunter's gear was simple but exact, a sealskin parka, sewn so tightly that no wind could find a seam, a bone-tipped spear with a detachable head, a coil of braided sinew for a line. On his belt, a skinning knife honed to a whisper, and most importantly, the patience to wait motionless for hours. The method was as old as the people themselves. Find the hole, stand still, let the ice and your own breath vanish from the seal's mind. Eventually, the animal would rise for air, and in that heartbeat, before it understood the shadow above, the spear would strike. But the waiting, that was the real test. Hunters would stand in the silence, their eyelashes freezing together, their knees locking from the cold, their minds wandering to the fire back in camp. Sometimes, the seals didn't come at all. Sometimes, they surfaced behind the hunter, mocking him with a splash before vanishing into the dark again. In the village, an elder once told a boy, "You don't hunt the seal, you wait until it chooses you." The boy had laughed, but after his first winter, standing over a black hole in the ice while the wind scraped his face raw, he understood. Seal hunting was less about killing than it was about proving to the world that you could belong here. When the catch finally came, it wasn't just meat. It was oil for the lamps, skin for boots and parkas, bones for tools. A seal could keep a family alive for weeks. Out here, it wasn't just an animal, it was survival wrapped in fur. And so, every year, when the sea froze and the wind sharpened its teeth, the hunters went out again. Not for sport, not for pride, but because the Arctic would only keep you if you brought something back. Part 2. The silent strike. The ice spoke in cracks and groans. Not words, but warnings. Every hunter knew that sound, a deep, whale-belly rumble that told you the sea was still alive beneath your feet. One wrong step and the ice could give way, plunging you into black water, so cold it stole your breath before you could even scream. That danger was the constant shadow of seal hunting. Tavrik, a hunter of 30 winters, crouched low beside an igloo. His knees ached, but he ignored them. He'd been there for 2 hours already, his body frozen in place, his mind narrowed to a single point, the water below. In one gloved hand, he gripped his harpoon, its shaft polished smooth from years of use. The detachable tip was carved from walrus ivory, lashed with sinew to a long braided line coiled at his feet. The wind had died. Only the faint hiss of his own breath filled his ears. He shifted his weight carefully, avoiding any sound that might echo through the ice. Seals were cautious. They knew the smell of people. They could hear the smallest tremor from above. In the distance, other hunters stood like statues over their own holes, each alone in their vigil. The Arctic was full of silences, but this was a special one. The silence of hunters waiting for the sea to breathe. Minutes became an hour. The sun, low on the horizon, painted the ice in bruised colors, blue, gray, and pale gold. Tavrik's eyelashes were white with frost. His toes were numb, his fingers stiff, but still he waited. Then it happened, a faint movement under the ice, a dark shadow rising in the black circle of water. Tavrik's heartbeat slowed, not sped. The seal's head broke the surface with a soft exhale, whiskers wet and twitching. In that instant, before the animal sensed the danger, Tavrik moved. The harpoon drove down, the ivory tip striking true. The seal thrashed, the line singing through the air as Tavrik braced his legs. The other end of the line was looped to his belt, the weight of the animal pulling hard against him. He leaned back, muscles straining. letting the seal tire itself against the pull of the rope. There was no shouting, no triumph, just steady, practiced work. The seal weakened, its movements slowing, until Tavrik could haul it onto the ice. The moment it lay still, he knelt beside it, resting a hand briefly on its head. Not in pity, in respect. The old ways demanded it. A life had been taken so others could live. From a pouch at his belt, he sprinkled a pinch of fresh snow over the seal's muzzle. "For your spirit's path," he murmured. Every hunter had their own words, but the meaning was the same: to send the animal on without anger, so its kind would return to the ice. The seal's body was heavy, the fat thick under its pelt. Tavrik lashed it to a small sled and began the long walk back toward the distant smudge of smoke on the horizon. Each step broke the crust of snow with a crunch. The wind picked up again, erasing his trail behind him. Back in camp, the catch would be welcomed not with cheers, but with quiet approval. The elders would examine the seal's teeth and bones, reading its age and the season's signs. The women would begin the work of skinning, rendering fat into oil for the lamps, cutting meat into long strips to freeze dry in the wind. And when the first oil lamp was lit that night, the flame would be steady and warm, its light dancing on the faces of children who had never known the cold without that glow. They would eat fresh meat, rich with the fat their bodies craved in winter. The seal's skin would become boots, gloves, maybe a new parka for a growing child. This was the way of the Arctic nomads. Nothing wasted, nothing taken without cause. Some outsiders called it brutal, the hunters called it life. And in the morning, when the sun crawled back up from the edge of the world, Tavrik would walk out onto the ice again. Because out here, survival was not something you achieved once, it was something you earned every single day. Part 3. The first catch among the Arctic nomads. Hunting seals was more than survival. It was a rite of passage. No boy became a man without facing the ice, the wind, and the patience of the hunt. But the first catch was different. It wasn't just about skill. It was about proving that the ice itself accepted you. When a boy reached the right age, usually his 12th winter, an elder would take him out before sunrise. Not a father, not a brother, but someone chosen by the council, a hunter known for both skill and patience. The belief was that family ties could cloud judgment. The boy needed someone who would let him fail if the ice demanded it. The apprentice would wear gear borrowed from many hands, a parka sewn by his mother, boots lined with wolf fur from an uncle, mittens stiff from years of use. Round his neck, the elder would tie a small carved talisman, often a seal in miniature, passed down through generations. It wasn't magic in the way outsiders understood it. It was a reminder that every hunter stood on the skill of those who came before. The first lesson was always silence. The boy would learn to walk without sound, to breathe so softly that even the snowflakes couldn't hear him. The elder would stop often, pointing to signs invisible to anyone else. A faint depression in the snow where a seal had rolled, a ripple in the ice where a breathing hole lay hidden, a patch of frost rimmed with fresh moisture. Once the hole was found, the true test began, the waiting. For hours, the boy would stand in the shadow of the elder, hands gripping the harpoon, eyes fixed on the black circle of water. The elder never spoke, except for a low murmur if the boy shifted too much or let his focus wander. Sometimes, the seal never came. The boy would walk back to camp with empty hands and a heavier heart. That was part of the teaching. Out here, you could do everything right and still come home with nothing. But when the seal did rise, it happened fast. The boy had only a heartbeat to act. The harpoon had to strike true, not in waste, not in cruelty, but in the clean, practiced motion that ended the animal's life quickly. A missed strike meant the seal would be gone, the hole abandoned for the rest of the season. If the boy succeeded, the elder would take a small piece of snow and place it in the seal's mouth. This was the oldest custom of all, symbolizing that the sea had fed the people, and the people had given the sea a final taste of its own water in return. Back in camp, the first catch was never eaten by the hunter himself. It was given to the elders and shared among the whole community, even those too old or too sick to hunt. This was the boy's public promise: I will feed others before I feed myself. The lesson was clear: a hunter who only hunted for himself wouldn't survive long anyway. That night, round the sea loyal lamps, the old storytellers would begin their work. They spoke of Sedna, the sea mother, who gave seals to the people in exchange for respect and careful hunting. They told of hunters who took too much, whose boats vanished under black waves, whose breathing holes froze over in the night. These were not fairy tales meant to frighten children. They were the laws of the ice, enforced not by men, but by the world itself. The boy, now a hunter, would listen in silence. He would remember the weight of the harpoon in his hands, the feel of the rope pulling, the moment the seal's eyes met his before closing forever. He would understand what his elders meant when they said a hunt was not just about killing, it was about joining an unbroken chain that stretched back to the first people who had walked this frozen edge of the world. And when the next winter came, it would be his turn to stand alone over an igloo, the wind cutting at his face, the endless white pressing against his patience. Only now, he would not be waiting for the ice to test him. He would be part of it. Part for the last hunter's thighs isn't what it used to be. That's what the elders say now, sitting near the lamps, their hands tracing cracks in the floorboards. As they speak, they remember winters when the sea froze early and stayed locked until spring, when igloo could be found in the same places year after year. But now, the seasons have shifted. The ice comes late, leaves early, and sometimes doesn't form thick enough to carry a hunter's weight. For the nomads, that change isn't just about the weather. It's about the slow unspooling of a way of life. In some villages, the young no longer learn to wait over breathing holes. Snowmobiles and rifles have replaced dog sleds and bone-tipped harpoons. Store-bought food comes in on supply boats. Pale bread, canned meat, sacks of rice. It's easier, yes, but easier doesn't always mean better. The elders worry that when the last hunter lays down his harpoon, the stories will stop breathing too. And yet, not all is lost. There are still those who walk out onto the ice before dawn. Parka hoods drawn tight, boots crunching on the crust. They carry modern gear now, steel-tipped spears, nylon lines, but the method is the same. Find the hole, stand still, wait for the sea to rise and meet you. One of them is Tavrik, his hair now streaked with white. He doesn't hunt as often as he once did, but when the cold is sharp and the sky is clear, he feels the pull of the old ways. Sometimes he takes his grandson, a boy of 11, out with him. The child fidgets at first, shifting his feet, blowing into his mittens. But Tavrik doesn't scold him. He knows patience comes like the ice, slowly, layer by layer. When a seal surfaces, the boy's eyes widen. Tavrik lets the moment pass, the seal slipping away untouched. The boy looks confused, even disappointed. Tavrik only says, "We don't take the first one. We take the one meant for us." It's an old rule, one that speaks more to spirit than to hunger. In camp, the few hunters who still practice the ancient ways gather in the evenings. They mend harpoon lines, share news of the ice, and pass around mugs of steaming tea. The younger ones listen to the talk without interrupting. They hear the names of places on the sea ice that no longer exist, swept away by warmer currents. They hear about hunts where a man stood so still for so long that a snowdrift grew against his legs. The elders know the future will not look like the past, but they also know that the past isn't gone until the last memory fades. And so they tell the stories of Sedna, of winters when the stars were so bright they seemed close enough to touch, of seals that saved villages in lean years, sometimes on calm nights. Tavrik walks to the edge of the shore ice and looks out over the dark water. The ice groans under his boots, and the cold slips into his lungs like a familiar friend. He knows that one day, perhaps soon, no one will wait over an igloo for hours. No one will tie a carved talisman around a boy's neck and send him into the wind. But he also knows that as long as there are people who remember, the hunt will never truly vanish. The sea has always been generous and unforgiving in equal measure. It gives, it takes, and it waits. And those who belong to it, the true hunters, know that they are not its masters, but its guests. When Tavrik returns to camp, his grandson runs to meet him, cheeks flushed from the cold. The boy asks if they will hunt tomorrow. Tavrik smiles, slow and sure. Yes, he says, as long as the ice will have us, in the end. The tradition isn't just in the spear or the kill, it's in the walk across the frozen sea, the stillness in the wind, the respect for the life that rises from the black water. It's in the knowing that you are part of something older than memory, and in the hope that someone will carry it forward when you are gone. Because in the Arctic, survival has never been about conquering the world. It's about listening to it and knowing when to wait.